Gerald was 72 years old, a retired civil engineer, the kind of man who approached everything in his life with precision and discipline. He walked 4 miles every morning without fail. He had not touched a cigarette in 20 years. His weight was exactly what the chart said it should be, and the morning he sat down across from me with his file open on the desk between us, he had 3 coronary stents already placed in his chest and a blood pressure reading from the previous week that I had circled twice in red ink. 178 over 104. He was on 3 medications, 3 of the most effective blood pressure drugs modern cardiology has produced. And his pressure was still sitting at a number that made every cardiologist in the room uncomfortable. He looked at me the way patients look at you when they have run out of things to try. Not defeated exactly, more like a man who has done everything the manual told him and discovered the manual was missing pages. And he said something I have never forgotten. He said, "Doctor, I have done everything they asked me to do. What am I missing?" I looked at his file. 15 years of cardiology appointments, medication reviews, stress tests, imaging. And then I looked at something that was not in the file at all, because nobody had ever put it there. I asked him what he ate for breakfast. He looked at me like I had asked him something slightly strange. And when he told me, I understood exactly what the missing pages said. Here is what most people are never told. And I mean this directly, because I have watched it play out across thousands of patient files over 23 years of cardiac medicine. The advice most seniors receive for high blood pressure is not wrong. It is incomplete. Reduce your sodium. Exercise regularly. Take your medication as prescribed. All of that is correct. All of it matters. But it addresses the surface of a problem whose roots go much deeper. And in an 11-minute appointment, which is the average length of a cardiology follow-up in this country, there is simply no time to get to the roots. The food industry has spent considerable resources keeping the public conversation about blood pressure focused on one variable: salt. Salt is real. Salt matters. But it is one instrument in an orchestra that most people never hear described in full. What I am going to give you today is the full score. If 5 specific, affordable, tonight-applicable food strategies that address the actual underlying mechanism of blood pressure dysregulation in the aging body. No new prescriptions, no side effects, just food, working the way food was designed to work when someone takes the time to explain the mechanism. And before we go any further, I want you to know something important about what this is and what it is not. These 5 strategies are not a replacement for your medication. I want to be completely clear about that. If your doctor has prescribed blood pressure medication, you take it. You do not reduce it or stop it without a direct conversation with your physician. What these 5 strategies are is everything that works alongside your medication, reinforcing it, complementing it, giving your cardiovascular system every possible additional advantage. Bring this to your next appointment. Show your doctor. Have the conversation. That is the right way to use what I am about to share. Now, let me explain what is actually happening inside your blood vessels, because once you understand the mechanism, everything else will make immediate sense. Inside every blood vessel in your body, there is a single-cell thick lining called the endothelium. It is extraordinarily thin. 5 of those cells, stacked on top of each other, would barely equal the width of a human hair. But that thin lining is responsible for one of the most critical functions your cardiovascular system performs. It regulates vascular tone. It controls whether your vessels relax and open or tighten and constrict. It manages inflammation in the vessel walls. And it produces a molecule called nitric oxide, which is your body's own internal blood pressure regulator. Think of the endothelium like the non-stick coating inside a pipe. When that coating is healthy and intact, blood flows smoothly, Vessels flex with every heartbeat, and pressure stays balanced. But when that coating is damaged by chronic inflammation, by oxidative stress, by decades of the wrong dietary inputs, the surface roughens, vessels lose their flexibility, and your heart has to generate more force to push the same volume of blood through. That increased force is what we measure as elevated blood pressure. Everything I am about to share works through this lining. Every single one of the 5 strategies you are about to hear either protects the endothelium, repairs it, or gives it the raw material it needs to produce the nitric oxide your body has been running low on for years. 1 mechanism. 5 entry points. Let us begin. I am Dr. Daniel Whitman, 23 years in cardiac medicine, over 3,000 patients. I have reviewed dietary histories alongside imaging studies, alongside surgical findings, and I can tell you with the certainty that only comes from that kind of accumulated clinical witness. What you eat in the years before a cardiac event writes the story I read on the operating table. I make these videos because the information exists. The research is solid, but somewhere between the laboratory and the 11-minute appointment, it disappears. It does not have to. The first strategy is beet juice, or 2 small roasted beets eaten with your morning meal. And I know what some of you are thinking. Of all the things a cardiac specialist could open with, he chose beets. Stay with me, because what happens inside a blood vessel 30 to 60 minutes after consuming dietary nitrates from beetroot is, by any objective measure, remarkable. Your endothelium, that thin lining we talked about, requires a constant supply of nitrates to produce nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is, functionally, your body's own blood pressure medication. It is the signal that tells vessel walls to relax and open. To stop holding tension they do not need to hold. When nitric oxide production is adequate, vessels are flexible, blood moves freely, and pressure stays in a healthy range. When nitric oxide production declines, which it does substantially after 60, vessels stiffen, resistance increases, and blood pressure climbs. Beetroot contains the highest concentration of dietary nitrates of any vegetable on the planet. And a landmark trial conducted at Queen Mary University of London in 2015 gave one group of adults with high blood pressure 250 milliliters of beet juice daily and a placebo to the other group. After 4 weeks, the beet juice group showed an average reduction in systolic blood pressure of 8 points. 8 points from a vegetable. That is the equivalent of what some low-dose medications produce, delivered through breakfast. Here is how to use it. 250 milliliters of raw beet juice in the morning, or 2 small roasted beets with your morning meal. Either works. Both deliver the nitrates your endothelium needs to produce nitric oxide through the day. And here is the detail most people miss entirely. Do not rinse your mouth or use mouthwash immediately after drinking beet juice. This sounds strange, but the science is unambiguous. The conversion of dietary nitrates to nitric oxide actually begins in your mouth, facilitated by specific bacteria that live on the surface of your tongue. Mouthwash destroys those bacteria. Use mouthwash at a different time of day, and you protect the conversion process that delivers the blood pressure benefit. Skip this step, and you lose a meaningful portion of the effect before it even begins. I have had patients who looked at beet juice and dismissed it before trying it. And I have had those same patients come back 3 weeks later genuinely surprised. Not because the beets tasted remarkable, because their morning readings had quietly shifted. When the body gets what it was running low on, it responds. And that is not mysticism, that is physiology. And while we are talking about the nitric oxide pathway, drop a comment below and tell me, had you ever heard that beets were connected to blood pressure before this video? I want to know what information you have been given and what has been left out. I read every response. The second strategy is garlic, specifically aged garlic extract. And what it does inside your arterial walls is the reason it has been used medicinally across virtually every culture on Earth for thousands of years, and why modern cardiology has finally produced the clinical trials to explain exactly why. As we age, the walls of our arteries gradually stiffen. This is partially the natural consequence of time, but it is dramatically accelerated by the kind of chronic low-level inflammation we discussed earlier. Stiff arteries cannot flex. A non-flexing artery forces the heart to work harder with every single beat, and the cumulative load of that extra work year after year is one of the primary stories I read in the operating room. The active compound in garlic is allicin, and what allicin and its derivatives do inside the cardiovascular system is inhibit an enzyme called angiotensin-converting enzyme, ACE. You may recognize that name because ACE inhibitors are among the most prescribed blood pressure medications in the world. What they do pharmaceutically is block the chemical signal that tells blood vessels to constrict. Garlic does the same thing, through the same pathway, through a compound the body has been encountering in food for hundreds of thousands of years and knows exactly how to use. A 2016 meta-analysis from the University of Adelaide reviewed 11 separate clinical trials on aged garlic extract and blood pressure. The average reduction in systolic pressure across all 11 trials, 8.7 points. That is a clinically meaningful number. That is a number that changes a risk profile. Here is how to use it. 600 to 1,200 milligrams of aged garlic extract daily, available in capsule form at any pharmacy. Or, if you prefer whole food, 4 raw cloves crushed and allowed to rest for 10 minutes before being added to your cooking. That 10-minute rest is not optional. Here is why. When you crush a garlic clove, you rupture the cell walls and bring 2 compounds into contact, alliin and an enzyme called alliinase. That enzyme converts alliin into allicin, the compound that does the work, but that conversion takes time. In 10 minutes at room temperature, if you crush garlic and immediately throw it into a hot pan, the heat deactivates the alliinase before it completes the conversion, and you lose most of the therapeutic benefit. Crush it, wait 10 minutes, then cook. One habit, same garlic, dramatically different outcome. The third strategy is dark leafy greens, and I need you to hear what I am about to say very carefully, because this is the one that surprises people the most, and the one that I believe is responsible for more uncontrolled blood pressure in seniors than almost any other single dietary gap. Here is what nobody is talking about in your doctor's office. After 60, the endothelium's capacity to produce nitric oxide declines substantially. We established that. But what most people do not know is that this decline is not only a function of aging itself. It is also a function of dietary nitrate depletion that has been building for decades. The endothelium is trying to do its job. It simply does not have the raw material. Spinach, arugula, Swiss chard, kale. These are the highest dietary nitrate foods in existence, delivering even more sustained nitrate loading than beets through daily consistent intake. And a 2021 study published in the journal Hypertension followed a group of seniors who added 2 packed cups of nitrate-rich leafy greens to their daily diet. Within 6 weeks, their average systolic blood pressure had dropped 6 to 7 points, without any other dietary changes. But here is where almost everyone makes a mistake that eliminates half the benefit. They boil their greens. A boiling leaches nitrates directly into the water, reducing their content by up to 50%. Steam your greens lightly or eat them raw. And pair them with something containing vitamin C, a squeeze of lemon juice, a few orange segments alongside, because vitamin C significantly enhances the intestinal absorption of dietary nitrates, Same greens, same serving, 30% more nitrate delivery to your endothelium. That is the difference one preparation detail makes. Now let me ask you something. Do you check your blood pressure in the morning? Most people who monitor at home do. And here is what almost nobody tells you about why that number, by itself, is not the full picture. The fourth strategy involves something that happens while you sleep. Something that is damaging the cardiovascular systems of millions of seniors every single night, entirely without their knowledge, and that their regular daytime readings will never reveal. It is called nocturnal hypertension, and it is among the most underdiagnosed and clinically dangerous blood pressure patterns I see in practice. Here is what is supposed to happen when you sleep. Your blood pressure drops significantly. The cardiovascular system uses the hours of sleep to genuinely rest. Vessel walls relax, heart rate slows, pressure falls to its lowest point of the day. This nighttime dip is not a minor detail. It is when your heart and arteries recover from the demands of the day. When it happens properly, it is one of the most protective things your body does for its own cardiovascular health. But in a condition called nocturnal hypertension, that dip does not happen. Pressure stays elevated, or it spikes in the hours between midnight and 4 in the morning. And while you lie there completely unaware, your heart is working overtime. Your arteries are under sustained stress, and the damage accumulates silently, night after night, while you sleep. Your morning reading will not show you this. You can wake up, take your pressure, get an acceptable number, and have absolutely no idea that the previous 6 hours were a cardiovascular event in slow motion. This pattern is directly linked to significantly elevated risk of stroke, heart attack, and kidney damage. And the standard monitoring most patients do at home completely misses it. So what does this have to do with walnuts? Quite a lot, as it turns out. If 30 grams of walnuts, that is approximately 14 halves, eaten 30 minutes before bed, has been shown in multiple peer-reviewed studies to measurably support the nighttime pressure dip your cardiovascular system is supposed to make. Here is why. Walnuts are the richest plant source of alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. They also contain meaningful amounts of L-arginine, a direct precursor to nitric oxide production, alongside melatonin and a range of polyphenols that collectively reduce vascular inflammation. Together, these compounds work as a gentle, sustained signal to the cardiovascular system as you enter sleep. Relax. Reduce tone. Let the pressure come down. That is what the system is designed to do, and walnuts give it the biochemical environment to do it. 30 grams, 14 halves, 30 minutes before bed. Write that down if you need to. Not with honey, not with chocolate, not as part of a larger snack that spikes blood sugar and defeats the purpose. Just the walnuts. What does it feel like when this works? It feels like waking up and the first sensation not being pressure. Not that vague heaviness behind the eyes that so many seniors describe as simply how mornings feel now. Something closer to having actually, genuinely rested. That feeling is your cardiovascular system having been given the environment it needed to do its job. The fifth strategy is hibiscus tea, 3 cups a day, and what I am about to tell you about it is the thing that, as a physician trained entirely within conventional Western cardiology, I resisted for longer than I should have. The hibiscus tea, made from the dried flowers of Hibiscus subdurifa, sometimes called sorrel, sometimes called red tea, sometimes called carcade, has been used as a cardiovascular medicine across Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East for centuries. For most of my career, I treated that history the way I was trained to treat it, as interesting cultural practice without sufficient clinical evidence to recommend. I was wrong to be that dismissive, and the research produced over the past 15 years has made that clear. Here is the mechanism. Hibiscus flowers contain a specific combination of anthocyanins and organic acids, hibiscus acids, that inhibit angiotensin-converting enzyme. The same ACE we discussed with garlic. In other words, a hibiscus tea acts on the cardiovascular system through the same pathway as the most commonly prescribed class of blood pressure medications in the world. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition gave adults with stage 1 hypertension 3 cups of hibiscus tea daily for 6 weeks. The result was an average reduction in systolic blood pressure of 7.2 points. 7 points. From a tea. And here is the detail that I find clinically significant every time I share it. Approximately 20% of patients prescribed ACE inhibitor medications develop a persistent dry cough as a side effect, significant enough that 1 in 5 stops taking the medication entirely. Hibiscus tea produces the same ACE-inhibiting effect without that side effect. For patients who have struggled with medication tolerance, this is not a trivial finding. The 3 cups daily, hot or cold, both work. Minimal sugar, because sugar undermines vascular health and works against the very mechanism you are trying to support. A small amount of honey if you need it. That is acceptable. One important caution that I will not skip. If you are already taking an ACE inhibitor medication, lisinopril, ramipril, enalapril, or any drug in that class, please talk to your doctor before adding regular hibiscus tea. You will be inhibiting the same enzyme through 2 separate pathways simultaneously, and the combined effect can push blood pressure lower than is safe. This is not a reason to avoid hibiscus tea. It is a reason to have the conversation with your physician so the combination can be managed properly. For most people, though, 3 cups of something warm and tart and deeply red. You're working quietly on the lining of your blood vessels 3 times a day. That is one of the simplest, most pleasurable additions to a cardiovascular health routine I know how to recommend. And I say that as someone who spent a long time being skeptical of it. Now I want to stop for a moment and bring something back to the surface. Gerald came back 6 months after that appointment, the one where I finally asked him what he ate. He had made 2 changes, just 2, because I asked him to start with 2 and nothing more. Beet juice every morning with breakfast, hibiscus tea twice a day, mid-morning and after dinner. That was it. Everything else stayed the same. His blood pressure at the 6-month follow-up was 141/88. Not perfect, but his cardiologist, independently, yet without being asked, reduced one of his 3 medications at that appointment. His inflammatory markers had shifted meaningfully. He looked genuinely like a man who had recovered some ground he had thought was gone permanently. And when he sat down across from me, he said something I carry with me into every video I make and every conversation I have about food and cardiovascular health. He said, "You asked me one question in that appointment that nobody had asked in 15 years. I just wish someone had asked it sooner." That is why this information exists. The research exists. The clinical evidence exists. But somewhere between the laboratory and the 11-minute appointment and the patient sitting at their kitchen table, it disappears. You are at that kitchen table right now. And you do not have to wait for an appointment to begin. Let me bring everything together clearly because I do not want you to close this video and forget half of it by morning. 1. Beet juice, or 2 small roasted beets every morning, 250 milliliters. Do not use mouthwash immediately after. Give the conversion process time to work. 2. Garlic, 4 cloves crushed, rested 10 minutes, then cooked, or 600 to 1,200 milligrams of aged garlic extract daily. The 10-minute rest is not optional. It is what creates the compound that does the work. 3. 2 packed cups of dark leafy greens daily. Spinach, arugula, Swiss chard or kale, lightly steamed or raw, never boiled. paired with a vitamin C source for better absorption. 4. 30 grams of walnuts. 14 halves. 30 minutes before bed. Plain. Nothing added. Every night. If 5. 3 cups of hibiscus tea daily with minimal sugar. Check with your doctor first if you are already on ACE inhibitor medication. 5 things. 1 mechanism. Every single one of them working on the same endothelial lining that regulates the tone of your blood vessels and the pressure your heart has to generate to move blood through them. Now, here is what I want you to do before you close this video. Not 5 things. 1. Look at that list and choose the one that feels most approachable for tonight. Maybe it is checking whether you have beets in the kitchen. Maybe it is ordering hibiscus tea online right now while you are thinking about it. Maybe it is putting a bag of walnuts next to your bed so they are there when you need them tonight. Just one. Because sustainable change does not come from heroic effort that burns out in 8 days. It comes from one decision, made consistently, until it becomes simply how you live. One decision compounded over 6 months is how Gerald's cardiologist reduced a medication at a routine follow-up appointment. It is not too late. Your endothelium is remarkably responsive. Give it the right raw material, and it will respond. I have watched it happen in patients in their 70s and 80s who decided it was not too late to give their body better tools. It was not too late for them. It is not too late for you. I want to hear from you now. Which of these 5 are you starting tonight? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know, because the people who tell me what they tried and what happened are the reason I keep making these videos. If this gave you something useful, something you did not have before you pressed play, please like, subscribe, comment, and share it. Every week I bring you the information that the 11-minute appointment does not have time for. Evidence-based, clinically grounded, explained in a way you can actually use. That is the commitment I make to everyone who watches these videos. I am Dr. Daniel Whitman. Take care of your heart. It has been working for you every minute of your life without ever asking for anything in return. I will see you in the next video.